If you're about to head to university, then you are probably going to be looking at a student bank account. You might be tempted by all the special offers that you see and go, right, fantastic, I'm going to go and grab that freebie over there. That's why I choose that particular bank. But there are other things you want to take into account as well as this. Yes, the freebie is important, but it's not the most important thing. So in this video, I'll take you through those factors you want to consider when choosing your bank account, your student bank account, and then the pick of the best ones for 2022. What do they have on offer that you can take advantage of? Now, the most important thing, the biggest consideration, I think, when you're choosing your account is probably going to be the overdraft. An overdraft, if you're not sure about this, is basically an agreed in advance amount of money that you can borrow from the bank. So normally, if you had £100 in your account, for example, you have £100, you spend it, it goes to zero. If you have an overdraft, you can spend more than that. You can go below that. So you will be owing the bank the money that you borrow. But the great thing about the student accounts is they won't charge you for this for a set amount. So for example, maybe they give you a £1,000 overdraft in year one. That means if you need to, you can spend £1,000 of money, borrow £1,000 from the bank, agreed up front, and you won't get charged any interest. If you do not have an overdraft that's agreed up front, or your overdraft is smaller than you actually need, if you go beyond your agreed overdraft limit, you will get charged interest. And this interest can probably be around 40%, which is massive. It's one of the most expensive ways to borrow. So you want to avoid this. Now, you might be thinking, I don't like the idea of this. I don't want to get into debt. And that is a great habit to be into. It's a great frame of mind to be thinking about at this young age when you're starting off at university, and to carry that on later on. You know, debt really is only for people, ideally, when you are sort of borrowing something that's quite expensive. So maybe you spread it out on 0% over a time and you know you can afford it. Or maybe it's there if there's an emergency and you don't have the savings for it. But ideally, borrowing is not for everyday spending. But as a student, things are a little bit different, right? You have your student loan, and maybe some money from your parents. Maybe you've been working in the summer, or you're going to get a job at university. Maybe you even get some grants and stuff like that. But even if you get all of those things, or just some of those things, uni is expensive. Those fees are expensive. Living costs are expensive. You might not be able to cope for the whole duration of your degree just on that money. You might have to borrow money. So having that overdraft, these agreed 0% overdrafts from a student current account, student bank account, they can be lifesavers. Now, of course, you will have to pay this money back at some point. You might have an overdraft for the duration of your degree. Most of them, it will be for 3 years, but some of them will let you, if you've got a 4-year degree or a 5-year degree, so you're doing a master's or something like that, then they might extend it, and maybe a bit more money to stretch over that time. But once you have graduated, you'll normally be moved over to a graduate account, a graduate bank account. And this will have still potentially a 0% overdraft, but it will start getting smaller, and maybe it will go straight away a large jump in year one. Maybe they give you a couple of years as it reduces down. But this will be obviously, for most of you, a priority to be clearing that overdraft when you graduate and when you start working, because I say it can be very expensive otherwise. So you should not treat this thing as like, oh great, I've got this money, I'll deal with it in 3 years or 4 years. No, this is money to spend it if you need to. It's not to treat yourself. It's not to have all the latest tech and latest gadgets. It is about making sure you can get through university without racking up expensive debts elsewhere. And that actually brings you to a couple of different ways these overdrafts work on student bank accounts. Some of them will give you a set amount of money, maybe just for the first term, and then it will expand and get more for the rest of the first year. I guess the idea is they don't want people who have suddenly never had money available to them before, suddenly just splurge it all within the first few months and then be absolutely screwed, have nothing left to get for the rest of the year. And likewise, some of them will then expand it after year one. When you start year two, then they'll get more money on top. In year three, more money again. Others might give you just an overdraft, and that is it for the 3-year degree. Others, as I mentioned, might continue that for year 4, year 5, make it bigger. So you might want to think about there, what's more important to you? Is it more important to have a large sum of money in that first year, or is it more important that you stagger it and you have a little bit of increase for each of those years that go on? Another thing, and I will take you through some of those different options in a moment, is that they might say up to, give you an overdraft of up to. This means it's not necessarily guaranteed. You might say it's up to £1,000. They might only give you £500. They might only give you £800. And this, how much they give you, will depend on your credit report. If you're 18, first time at uni, you probably haven't got much of a credit report. It's called a thin credit report or credit file. I've got a whole video taking you through credit reports, how they work. So do check that out if that's new to you. That might mean you aren't able to get some of the full amounts that they promise. So don't sort of assume that you can get £3,000 just because it says up to £3,000. You might get less. And again, that £3,000 will be staggered over 3 years, I should say. Or it might be, this is your overdraft. You will definitely get it. You might feel that even though it's smaller, potentially in terms of the total size you might be able to get, the fact it's guaranteed that might be more important to you. So that's overdraft. Again, I think one of the most important things. And one more thing to say on these, actually, if you are thinking, do you know what? I do not need one. I am not going to get that. I've got enough money coming in from different sources. Or I'm really frugal. I'm living at home, so my costs are a lot less. I would still consider getting the overdraft, because you could do something where you take that money out of the overdraft, withdraw it, and then put it into a savings account. Now, savings accounts aren't fantastic right now. They're getting slightly better. But let's say you had a £1,000 overdraft. You take that out. You put it into a savings account that is earning 2%. I know it's not amazing, but 2%. Then you'll get 20 quid. I know that isn't amazing in a year. But again, rates are improving. Maybe you're able to get a higher rate. You've got 2 years. You've got 3 years. You've got all that time where maybe you're going to be able to save some cash on that, earn some cash. So it's definitely worth thinking about it. And you've still got that money, as long as it's not locked away, fixed in a savings account. If it's easy access, you can still access that cash if you need it for any unexpected costs. You might also want to think about having separate accounts for your money coming in and for your spending. So your student account that you choose, the one with the overdraft, the one that maybe your student loan goes into, the fees come out of, and so on. You might then want to have a separate spending account. This is quite handy for budgeting purposes. So let's say, right, I can afford to spend £200 this week for whatever reason on all my things that are coming out. Your food, your bills, going out, clothes, anything you need to buy. That's your amount for this week. You could transfer that out into a completely separate account. So it is not getting mixed in with the overdraft. It's not getting mixed in with the other bits and pieces. It's completely separate and it is controlled. Once that money is gone, you've got to make a decision. Do you move more money over? And if you're doing that, obviously you're taking money away potentially from a future week or a future month where that might be allocated. Or do you go, right, I've got £10 left now. I'm going to have to call it. I can't do this thing today. I'll have to wait until next week before I buy this or do that. I'll take you through my top picks for that in a moment. And what's important about some of these spending accounts, as I call them, is that they often come with a soft credit check. So whereas I mentioned before about your credit report having an impact on your student current account, these other ones, they probably won't have any impact at all in terms of getting them. It should be relatively easy to get hold of them. So you can have that as a separate account and it won't be any problems or likelihood of getting rejected. The only thing about them is they're not going to be ones for overdrafts, because the overdrafts, if they offer them, can be quite expensive. Let's talk about the other big reason for choosing a student account then. This is your freebies. Freebies are very nice to have, and I certainly would be choosing one with a decent freebie over one that doesn't have a freebie at all. But I perhaps would be angling between like the overdraft and freebie in contribution together, rather than the best freebie or the best overdraft. The ones that do it together are going to be quite good. Now, there are different things on offer. I'll take you through them in a moment when I run through the best accounts. I would be looking personally for the ones that offer you cash. There are a couple that will give you money, as opposed to ones that give you something like a rail card or a dining card or things like that, or an NUS card, totem card, because those things can be bought with the money if you want them. And you might be able to shop around and get them for less. Or you might decide you don't want them or you want an alternative. Whereas if that's what you've gone for, that's what you've got. And if you don't use it, tough luck. So I would always favour the money over the other options. So let's have a look, shall we, at the best student bank accounts. This is my top picks. There are other ones available out there. I have gone into full detail of those over on the blog if you do want to read more about them. But these are the ones I think that are worth paying the most attention to. And at number one, the one I think is the best for most people, is the Nationwide Flex student account. This one has potentially the largest overdraft you can get, and it also has a fantastic cash bonus. It's also probably the most ethical of your options. Let's start with that cash bonus, £100, which is a fantastic amount of money you can get, and it is yours for free. You have to open up the account after the 1st of August, and that means that you cannot have had a student or graduate account from Nationwide as of the 31st of July. But if you're a new student, you won't have got one of those ones, I wouldn't have thought. Open up the account and deposit £500 into it by the 16th of December 2022. Now, this offer could go at any time, but I imagine it'll be running throughout September, October, maybe into November as well. Put that £500 in and you will get that money paid into your account. That's free cash. Fantastic way to do this. The overdraft is one of those up to deals. So you might not get the full amount, but if you do get the full amount or even slightly less than the full amount, I still think you're going to have the largest overdraft out there. In the first year, it's up to £1,000. In the second year, up to £2,000. In the third year, up to £3,000. That's basically an extra grand added every single year. You do have to ask for this extension each year, and they will assess your what they think you can afford and what they think is good for you each time. So again, you might get less each time, but that total of potential £3,000 over 3 years is more than you'll get elsewhere. When you graduate, they slowly sort of taper that down. So in year one, the overdraft drops of graduation to 2,500. So you have to clear at least 500 of that in that first year. Then 1,750, then down to £1,000. So you've got a while. You don't have to pay it all off straight away. Time to pay that debt back while it's at 0%, which, okay, is very, very rare to get something so sizable. For that overdraft, you will have to continue putting £500 into the account every single term. Again, if that's your student loan or something like that, then that's not going to be any problem. That money doesn't have to stay there. It just has to go into the account. So that's my number one pick, the Nationwide Flex Student. I mentioned also that it's probably the most ethical option out there. That's because Nationwide is a building society. And basically any money that, the majority of money that a building society has to be used to lend to people buying their home. That's where the building society name comes from. So it cannot be used for any other kind of investment. And this is what a lot of the other banks will do. A lot of the big banks, the ones that we're going to talk about in a second, your money, if it's sitting there, it could well be going towards fossil fuel extraction, arms manufacturing, tobacco. I mean, any of these things you personally might disagree with, your money could be used towards that. So again, if you're thinking about something ethical, then absolutely Nationwide is your best bet out of these options. App-wise, is not necessarily the best one, but as I said before, maybe go for one of those other kind of spending accounts, which I'll talk about in a second. And that means all you're really using this one for is to transfer money from that account into your spending account. And that's where you do most of your banking. So it's not going to be too much of an issue right now. The next one to look at if Nationwide isn't right for you or you want a guaranteed overdraft is the Santander 123 student account. This one has that guaranteed £1,500 overdraft. So you absolutely will get that £1,500. Then it increases in year 4 if you stay for longer to £1,800, and if you're 5 years up to £2,000. So obviously it's a lot of money to have in year 1 that if you spend it all in year 1, then you're a bit stuck for year 2 and year 3, which is why I prefer the Nationwide one, because it does increase by large amounts in subsequent years. But again, guaranteed £1,500. The freebie here is a 4-year rail card, a student rail card, or 16 to 25 rail card, they call it. That will give you a third off train fares as long as you're traveling at off-peak times. So in the daytime or weekends, you're going to be fine, but maybe not a rush hour. Now, that is not a bad one. It's probably worth about 100 quid if you were to get those sort of separately. But I still think you maybe get 100 quid from a different bank. If you want a rail card, buy it from that, particularly because there are often special offers and special deals that might give you savings on the rail card. Already twice this year, there's been a third off rail cards by a train line. Tesco Club Card, if your regular supermarket where your uni is a Tesco and you're getting points all the time, you'll earn enough, I would imagine, quite quickly to get a rail card for a third of the price, so 2/3 off. So again, I don't think the freebie is the best bet here, but where it is doing quite well is that guaranteed overdraft. Again, there will be terms and conditions with this. Again, we're paying £500 into it every single term and other things like that. So do make sure before you apply with any of these accounts, you do read all those terms and conditions. Now, my third choice here is very, very similar to the Nationwide one, but it's with HSBC. With their student account, you will get £100 and you'll also get an up to overdraft of £1,000 in the first year, increasing £2,000 in the second, £3,000 in the third. So that's pretty decent, right? However, the big difference for me between HSBC and Nationwide is that it is not one of the most ethical ones out there. And also the app isn't great. So if you're choosing between HSBC and between Nationwide, absolutely I would go with Nationwide. Incidentally, if you do want that £100 free cash, you have to use your debit card 5 times in the first 30 days. You would also still have to deposit £500 into the account every term. So again, when it comes to comparison between the two, Nationwide wins every single time for me. Now, they're the top ones that I would talk about. I'll quickly sort of tell you about some of the other freebies out there. The reason why I'm not going to sort of put them in my top picks. Barclays student account will give you a free year of something called Perlego, which apparently is the Spotify of textbooks, up to 900,000 books online that you can use. That might be quite handy. They say this is worth £144 or £12 a month. But you've got libraries at university, you've got the internet, and you've got your cash from those other accounts. I think it's much, much better to prioritize the money rather than go for this. Because if you don't need this, then what's the point of getting it as a freebie? And there might be other deals out there to reduce the cost of it. So that's why I wouldn't go for Barclays. NatWest RBS, they would give you £80 cash and a 4-year taste card. So just a little bit less in terms of money. Plus the taste card could be worth 30 quid a year. So if you add that together, 4 years of that, plus the £80 cash, maybe that's worth £200. That's worth a lot more than the others. But again, a taste card, these kind of things, you can often get deals and offers for them, often free trials. And you might find there are other ways for student discounts to be had to save you money out there. The overdraft also is £500 in the first term, then up to £2,000 after that. So again, it's not necessarily an awful one, but I would prioritize the other ones over this. And the only other one with like a really notable freebie is the Lloyd student account. That will give you a 3-year Totem card. Totem is basically the student discount card. This will normally cost you about 25 quid for 3 years. Just buy it for 25 quid. You might not even need it. Your actual student card itself might get you access to all the discounts out there. And there are other schemes out there like Student Beans and other ones which might actually do everything you need it to. So you might not need that one at all. Now, very quickly, I mentioned those spending accounts, that additional accounts you have on top of that student account, because you only have one student account. This is a non-student account, and I would look at either Chase, Monzo, or Starling for your day-to-day spending. I have compared these in detail in another video, so watch that one if you're interested. But headlines, I would probably go for Chase Bank as that spending account, because you get 1% cash back on your spending for the first year. So you're going to be making money while you spend as well. Or in terms of what best, my favorite one in terms of just everyday banking, probably Starling, but Monzo still is pretty decent, just a few more restrictions. What's great about all three of those cards, whichever one you go for, they're also going to be fee-free to use them abroad. So whether you are going abroad for a semester or just during the summer holidays, that's a great way to save a little bit of extra cash as well. My name is Andy Webb. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these videos here to make sure you've got the most from your money.